Wanda Wolf,
Here.
Richard Swezak,
Here.
DeAndrea here, Bob Doan,
Here.
good morning, Al Regina,
Here.
and Ryan Thompson.
I'm here.
Good morning. And right now, we don't have on our agenda any surveying items, unless, of course, I missed one, except for those items that Ryan wants to introduce to the board. I think it's more or less at this point information, Ryan.
Yeah, there's no need for any action at the current time. I do have one update from, I don't know if everybody got a chance to review the information I asked Jane to send out last month. But just so everybody's aware, there is going to be a change in the datum, and there is going to be a change to, well, there already is a change, nationally, but Connecticut will be following in those footsteps to the international foot instead of the U.S. survey foot, which is a fairly insignificant difference at a small scale, but at a large scale, obviously can throw things off by several feet. So that makes a difference in future projects. There's also work going on in CALS to establish language that we want to try to get into regulations for using GNSS RTN specific surveys for boundaries. Currently, as you're aware, we have Class A2 for horizontal accuracy, and there is some stuff that's been done by the DOT that discusses accuracy for base rover systems, but nothing for just GNSS on an RTK network. So that's all stuff that's going to be coming down the pike. At some point, this committee, this group, this board will need to help establish a SAMSAC committee, which is I can't remember the exact wording, but it's the standards committee.
Standard and Map Standards Advisory Committee.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, and we'll need to establish that so that we can actually implement some language into the legislation to change the regulations. But one update on that. I did find out that the DOT actually is taking the lead on the datum and the international foot. That's not something we need to do. But we will probably have a big piece in the development of the GNSS standards. So that's the long and short of it.
When you say
more to come over time, I don't want to belabor it, but I wanted everybody to be well aware of it. It's coming, within the next year, we will probably need to make some sort of movement on that. Maybe less. So
one other thing, Ryan, that you mentioned is that the makeup of the committee requires 2 members of the board. So there's 6 members. 2 members are supposed to come from our board. So have you appointed yourself 1 member?
Well, I figured I would be either from this board or from CALS, but one way or another I'll be on.
Yeah. So obviously it's beneficial to the board if you're the designee from our board. So Bob, don't you have any interest in participating in that?
Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to find the time, I don't think, to give it the appropriate amount of time.
Right. So hopefully, Ryan, you can speak with Ken or Bob and see if they have the time and the knowledge and the expertise to add productively. It's unfortunate that they make up this requirement years ago without fully anticipating, and then to that end, we have change in our legal representation from the DCP, and I would bet that they have no idea that they were appointed to this committee 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not a good setup. but it's in the regulations, so that's something else that has to be changed, I guess they decided that the legal representation should be provided from the DCP, but why? If it's a committee to keep track of the regulations, at the end of the day, we have to advise the legal department. I guess, the input from our legal department is going to be extremely important to make sure that the regulation is written correctly. So should a committee member be that person who reviews it for compliance? Doesn't seem quite right.
Tony, if DOT, Ryan, as you mentioned, DOT is going to be taking the lead on some regulation change. Will that be a catalyst so we can get all of our regulation changes that we want finally approved?
Well, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Tony.
Well, I was going to say that's a good idea, but you understand, well, I'm guessing my anticipation is that they're going to say, look, this is what we need. We don't want to encumber our work with your work. And we've seen that before, right? We've seen that.
Yeah, we have.
I think that, along the same line, perhaps CALS has to be motivated to work parallel. Look, if the DOT has some standing and it's important, and they're going to get it done, they have to get it done in so many words, right? So then we should have the CALS ready to go parallel with the change in the regulation, which could and should allow our minimum request to be included.
Yeah. So CALS is interested in motivated to get all this stuff done as well.
Okay, so we would need to find out how does DOT intend to proceed in its manipulation, or contact selling to the legal the law committee, of the legislature.
Yeah. I'm gonna have more conversations with Bob Barrett. He's the one on the CALS side who seems to be the most knowledgeable and most actively involved in all this.
But that might be a great idea, if the DOT has to go through the legislative process, then perhaps the engineers, such as that structural coalition that wanted to get some recognition, that could be the one of the three forks, the three tines in the fork. You got the CALS going, the engineers going, and the state going, all for the same purpose of updating the regulations to the benefit of the public, right? I think it could be done if it was orchestrated correctly. And maybe you say Bob Barron can do that, and we'll get back in touch with the structural guy. Richard, do you have any relationship with the structural coalition, so to speak, in the state?
I have Bob Dunn here. No, I've lost, being on the retirement phase.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not really that actively involved anymore.
Okay.
I go to some of their seminars and I have talked to their junior or their youth group, at one time, for, the board, of examiners to allow, sort of give them some indication as to what's necessary to get their, professional engineering degrees or licenses.
Well, I know that one of the members was from SLAM, so perhaps I could.
I could get in touch with somebody if need be.
I think if you could, there was an engineer out of SLAM. Do you remember?
Yes.
Perhaps you could inquire of that and just start the thought process of working together to get their discipline-specific notice in the regulation, and at the same time, whatever they write up, include our writing, our text, for the education. It could work. I mean, but we have to make sure they all three go together,
right,
for that same basic purpose.
Yep.
Right, and it should be done at the same time, for sure.
Yeah. All right. If you would be able to talk to SLAM and plant that seed.
Okay. Yes.
Ryan's going to continue with CALS and follow through with what or how DOT plans to do it, because they have to go through the process to change the regulation, right?
Yeah.
Is that right, Al? You're the guy on the legislative committee, or you seem to know how it works. I don't.
I'm not listening to be truthful with you. I'm looking at something else here.
All right, no, I was
Sorry.
just saying that, understanding how the legislative process works in order to be able to change the regulation, which would be necessary to accommodate the international foot, would enable us to piggyback, if you will, on the structural coalition as well as the CALS coalition to get all three things updated. So I was just asking if you understood the legislative process and how DOT would have to go through their efforts to change the regulation to allow the international foot.
Well, the comment was made earlier, would they want to muddy up what they're doing? If they've got something that they're just sliding on through here, to add other features to it, probably would stall everything for them,
Well, I guess that's the question. Can they circumvent it if the DOT decides that every job that goes through the DOT has to be designed on the international foot? Then they're going to say, I don't need to go through the legislative process to change it. Right? We tried that a few years ago with the metric system, and that didn't go very far.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to
Again-
have to find out. Ryan, if you can find out
Who's
who might be the lead in
pushing this
DOT.
through? Is the
Yeah,
DOT sponsoring this, or?
No, well, not entirely. The DOT has to go through the process of converting the the datum information and the international foot. But there's other aspects that CALS is certainly interested in, and that's specifically with GNSS RTN surveying, boundary surveying specifically. And then also there's, some enforcement, issues that we're concerned about. But there seems to be a plague of unlicensed surveying work that we'd like to address. But
So where does it actually stand then? Is there a sponsor
right
for
now-
this?
right now it's yes, there is. So at the DOT, hold on, give me a second. At the DOT, we have, I guess Tom Benoit is heading up the aspects that are specifically, on their radar, which is the datum and the international foot. They don't really care about the rest of it, but
Okay, understood.
Hello, Tony. Bob Don here.
Morning, Bob. Thank you for
I'm trying to
joining.
get through on the phone anyway. My online is not working at all. I'm fairly versed in the legislative process, so if we want additional help on dealing with the legislative end of it, I'm available.
Good. That's good to know, because if we're ever going to be able to change our minimum standards of education in the statutes and the regulations, we're going to need to go through that legislative process, and we've failed miserably. We're trying to figure out a way, if CALS is going to go forward with something that, if CALS is going to go through with something that needs to be done in order to change the regulations, then the board would like to piggyback along with that on our education requirements. So
Yeah.
as in your absence, in case you didn't hear it, you've been identified or designated as the second member of the SAMSAC committee that's going to have to be reconstituted in order
Yep.
to make the changes. So
Well, that's good, because I was going to suggest that anyway.
good, thank you.
So,
Awesome. Thanks,
and
Bob.
then, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just
Excuse
said
me?
thank you.
So then you should stay active with the CALS committee, because now CALS has to determine two people from their group.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to represent two groups, but it certainly wouldn't hurt.
No, you can't. You have to be the board representative, and
Yeah,
CALS has to
But
designate
it
another
wouldn't
one.
hurt to have me there anyway, because, I am the legislative liaison anyway for Cal.
Yes.
Okay,
And, if we have any hope of getting this done, we're gonna need the assistance of Kevin Reynolds, the Cal lobbyist, to be able to make this happen, because in the past, the legislature has always been resistant to changing the educational requirements, primarily because there's not an in-state program. And that we're gonna have to make the argument that that's not as critical of a requirement as it used to be. It's the educational accessibility has changed enormously over the last 10 years. So,
right, agreed. Okay. All right, I think that covers that. And thank you, Ryan, for the information. And thank you, Bob, for agreeing to participate as the member of the board, along with Ryan, to the SAMSAC committee when it is formally reconstituted. Ryan, the other thing, I guess, is somehow formally we have to advise, if that's part of the committee, if you're going to be the spearhead of it, to let the legal representative from the DCP has to be involved.
Yeah. I guess maybe Tony, I can give you a call after this meeting and we
Yep.
can discuss some of the more like the details of that, because I'm not sure exactly how to wrestle that, to be honest.
Neither am I, but we can discuss it.
Yeah.
again, I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done to make things like that happen too.
Well,
So,
Bob, with your liaison to the cows, number one, and your expression that you're familiar with the legislative process, then you might start with Kevin Reynolds and point out that when this SAMSAC was originally set up, it obligated, a member of the legal department of DCP to be on the committee.
yeah,
How extensive is that obligation, under the way that this SAMSAC was formulated or constituted, right? It just seems odd and somewhat unworkable to me. You guys volunteered to participate in, and you say to the legal guy, "Hey, guess what? You got 4 more meetings next month."
so the legal guy, just so that I'm clear when I talk to Kevin, the legal guy has to be from DOT?
Not from DOT, from the DCP legal department.
Okay, from Department of Consumer Protection.
Yeah. As Bob pointed out in the regulation 20-300B,
Yeah,
right? 2 of the committee shall be members of the board who hold license as surveyors. That's Ryan
Yeah.
and Bob. 1 member shall be a licensed land surveyor in private practice. And 2
yeah,
shall be members put forth by CALS and the director of the legal division of the DCP. So who is the director of the legal division of DCP at this time? Do we know?
Julianne, Mr. Chairman, this is Janita Hamel. Julianne Avalon is the Director General Counsel for DCP Legal, and the legal director person who handles and assists us with presenting to the boards when we have reports and going to present for unlicensed people or whatever violation there were, is Paul Grabowski. So I believe if you wanted conversation with the either General Counsel Julianne Avalon, who's the head, or Paul Grabowski, you might want to go through your board secretary, Rochelle Heiberg, to set that, set a meeting up or let them know you're looking to set a meeting up.
Yeah, I can send an email after the meeting and CC you guys on there, so then you all are in contact.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, Rochelle, that might be helpful from your standpoint is to take a copy of that section 20-300B and send it to Julianne and ask her for her reaction to that.
Sure.
All right, if you could do that, copy Jane and so she can copy the board, so we know, we'll keep track of this process. But I think the first thing that can be done, we've done our part, so to speak, to identify Ryan and Bob as members of SAMSAC. And you can at least introduce the issue or the obligation at this point, based on the regulations, that Julianne has to participate in one way or the other, perhaps just as the ultimate reviewer of the proposal when formulated.
If I remember correctly, Tony, the last time they assigned somebody to be the head of the wing's representative on the actual active committee, and then that's exactly what they did, was that the head's role was to review and input.
So it's not that onerous. At the end of the day, she would be doing her normal job to review the regulation as it's presented.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
all right.
And I think the last time the hardest spot to fill was finding a surveyor in private practice who was not Cal's appointed. So I can't remember whether that statute says not a member of Cal's or just somebody who's not appointed by Cal's.
Well, I think that was fairly clear. It just says,
Okay.
one
As
of
long
whom
as
shall
it's
be a
clear,
licensed
then
land
we'll
surveyor
be able
actively
to-
engaged in private practice,
And so that to me means that it could be anybody, including a CALS member, as long as they're not appointed by CALS, because the
Right.
function of that person was to represent non-affiliated licensure.
Right. I mean, when you get right down to it, who's going to make the selection? It says 2 from a list of 3 designated by CALS.
Yeah.
That's kind of ludicrous, in my opinion. Either CALS appoints 2 people that volunteer, but they have a list of 3. So look, you're the 3rd guy. You want it or don't you? Yes. It all coming from CALS, Bob. It's silly to try to distinguish between the source. If the surveyor is an active member of CALS, he's in private practice, then if he wants to participate, then he should be allowed to. All right, I think we got to move on. That's good.
I totally agree with you on that. It's the only question is, will the body of the regulation allow for that reasonable approach?
Well, I think it does.
I mean, it's not a hill that can't be climbed.
Right. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Let's move on. I think the next thing we should do right now is just to hear from Janita formally on the list of the investigations, complaints, and how they've been handled in the last period. So we had one new complaint regarding workmanship of an engineer, third party complaint.
Yep.
Case is closed.
Yes, sir. The investigator reviewed it, and it's a dispute of facts, closed the case. There was traffic studies being presented during a town's zoning meeting and for development, and somebody who was a part of the public decided that that was wrong and filed a complaint. And the investigation yielded that it was a dispute of facts, that the engineer had not done anything wrong. And in this time period from January 1st of 2024 and through February 29th of 2024, we received 2 new engineering complaints to be investigated.
Okay. Appreciate that. I've never seen or heard of a traffic report that didn't offend somebody. Poor
Well,
guy.
yeah, so he,
Talk about a dispute of facts. Okay, we've all
you-
seen that one. Thank you, Janita. Anything else that
You're-
you want to add?
no, Mr. Chairman, I think I'm good. So if you
Good.
are all good with me, I'll say have
Yep.
a good day.
Thank you very much. And
You're
we'll
quite
see you next
welcome,
time.
all. Yep.
Right, the next item of business that we should address as a board for, it's an engineering issue. It's on our agenda as item C1, and it involves a request by one Nathan Morrow for license by reciprocity here in Connecticut. Our board had determined that based on our policy and regulations that we enforce in the model law, that the education criteria did not meet our standards that we've imposed or applied to other applicants in similar situations. John DeWolf had done a significant evaluation. I signed a letter to NCWS for a requesting clarification of how NCWS evaluated the education criteria, which we find to be inconsistent with what our board had determined. So, Mr. Morrow, I know you had introduced yourself. Would you like to make a comment or involve or initiate a discussion about our interpretation?
I'm mostly here just if you had specific questions about my expertise or my, I certainly have been considering 2009 when I graduated with a physics degree and planned to go into engineering. I've been, watching the requirements for education, and as part of my master's program, I took several undergraduate classes to try and meet that requirement, and had my credentials evaluated at the time to make sure that I wouldn't have trouble in the future getting my PE license, because as a structural engineer, obviously it's extremely important to have that license to be able to practice in the field. It's required. So if there's any specific questions on what those courses were, whether it meets the requirements, I know I got the letter from NCES in response to your questions to them, and they said that the evaluation at the time met the requirements, and that they would have made the same determination had they done their evaluation now as well.
Just as a little bit more background in the application that you presented, you noted that you were licensed in Hawaii, and that your business that you work for or work with is located in Massachusetts. Have you applied to Massachusetts for licensure?
I have, yes. And I now have a Massachusetts license as well. I relocated to Massachusetts last year. And as part of that relocation, I applied both for Massachusetts and Connecticut.
Okay. So in the application, it did not have that indicated.
Correct, because I was in the process. So I had not been licensed at the time.
So what's been our issue in this regard, and you're not the only one that's come up against this, and in some cases there have been very what's the word I want to use, very intense, for lack of a better word, recognition of the deficiencies in the science degree, undergraduate science degree. And there was a concerted effort then to study more courses during the master's program that would significantly account for the deficiencies in the science degree. So John DeWolf is a member of the board, a retired professor from UConn, structural engineer, and he did an evaluation of the requirements of the model law that we follow here in Connecticut, and the inconsistencies of the physics degree and the deficiencies therein for the undergraduate engineering program. So, John, do you want to add something more to that would help
Yeah.
Nathan understand?
Basically, you have a good physics degree, but it's not an engineering degree. And the board requires, in the way we evaluate all applications, a four-year engineering degree program. You do not have that. You have a good master's, but that is not a four-year engineering program. The physics degree doesn't come anywhere near to doing that. As our chair has just
You
noted,
cut out, John. We lost you there.
if somebody has a science degree, they go for a master's in engineering, but in order to get into the master's program, they have to go back and take undergraduate courses that are in the four-year engineering bachelor's degree. You haven't done that. You've basically just got a typical master's, 10 course master's, non-thesis master's in engineering, as we see it.
At Northeastern, I took an additional 4 undergraduate courses in order to begin my master's course of study. So those 4 courses were in addition to what was required for a typical master's at Northeastern. That was beyond what each of my classmates in the program did. And that was seen both in the NCES evaluation and other boards of licensure as the equivalent. In addition, including my physics degree as equivalent to a 4-year engineering degree, those 4 courses were outside of the typical master's program.
Nathan, what were those 4 courses? I'm looking at the trans.
Yeah.
It's
on page 17. If you're looking at a transcript, if you have it digitally, it's the 17th of 23.
Right.
It's statics and strength
steel
of
design.
materials, structural analysis 1, steel design, and reinforced concrete design.
Correct.
Yeah, those are listed within the 48 credits.
Correct. And those
Which John
48
is
credits
saying-
are the equivalent.
But
Well, John is-
that's nowhere near equivalent to a 4-year engineering bachelor's program. Requires breadth in multiple areas. You can't do it just in structures. It also requires some knowledge in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. You don't have any of that. That is our problem.
I understand the concern, and 2 of the courses that I took at Northeastern were in mechanical engineering, and I took electric fields and circuits and electric theory courses as well at Bowdoin, and those are approved as part of an engineering curriculum that they share, a 3-2 program with MIT, and those courses are part of that program. I wasn't part of that program, but those are approved engineering courses, which were originally approved by NCEES in their original evaluation. I understand the concern with the breadth, but as a structural engineer, I passed the 2-day structural engineering exam. That's my area of focus. I passed the FE course, which tests the breadth of my engineering education, and I feel like I've met those requirements. So I can't really go beyond what my transcript and my evaluations have said.
But as I just noted, you'd lack the breadth in civil engineering that graduates of a 4-year program would have. Our problem is that we're working with old regulations that were developed long before the computers were even developed. And nowadays, with what you do with computers, you can do all kinds of stuff. And we are a lot more concerned about having a broad four-year engineering degree in order to practice engineering in Connecticut with the PE.
I understand, and I know that all PEs, regardless of their education practice, you know, specifically in their area of expertise, and I definitely would not be, you know, stamping anything that's involved with civil that I don't have experience or education related to. It would all be structural. And like I said, I've passed the much more stringent structural examination, the lateral and vertical loads. And that is my area of practice, and I feel like I'm well trained and well educated in order to do that practice. And so I would be fairly dismayed if I'm not allowed to do that in Connecticut because of my education 15 years ago, which I carefully, you know, met the NCEES requirements and was at the time tracking and speaking with NCEES actively to make sure that I met those requirements of an equivalent of a four-year engineering degree. I'm not saying I have a four-year engineering degree. I'm saying I have an equivalent through my coursework at Bowdoin College, as well as my coursework at Northeastern, both part of my master's and undergraduate courses, as well as an additional course I took at Harvard.
The other question that came up is your master's program, you're getting 4 credits per course, whereas a normal master's program is 3 credits per course. How did that happen?
Like it said in the NCES evaluation letter, that's how my coursework was defined. It's 4-hour courses. It's based on the amount of work expected of each student, the amount of coursework in class as well as outside of class. They have determined it's a 4-hour course, each one of those. And that's, you know, I can't speak to what a normal master's course is, but Northeastern is a BET accredited engineering program, and all of their courses have been evaluated by the national.
Those courses are normally 3-credit courses anywhere else. This is the first time I have seen where they give 4 credits for something. That's how you run your credits up to what is in the 4-year degree. It just doesn't work.
I mean, respectfully, it's how Northeastern has defined their engineering courses and how it's been evaluated and approved by ABET and NCES to equivalency. And I think that would come up with any degree coming from Northeastern, that question would come up, but that's how they do it. And that's the level of coursework. I'd be happy to get any letters from my professors. You know, they're all well-respected members of the engineering community. Professor Hajar is the president of the Structural Engineers Institute. He was one of my professors, and he gave me an evaluation coming into practice. I'm sure if you would like a letter from him of my credentials and the Northeastern system and their coursework, I'd be happy to provide that.
When you took the when you sat for the structural exam, when was that? Just for the record.
I passed the vertical portion in 2017 and the lateral portion in 2018.
Okay. All right. You know, we see in your.
We have made a decision to deny, right?
We did. Yes, sir.
So I'm still not convinced that this comes anywhere near the 4-year engineering degree. And I want you to be clear that we are consistent. We have not made exceptions. And we have done the same thing with others that have had a 4-year degree that is not an engineering degree, that is strictly a science degree. And the master's is a good master's. There's no question. We're not questioning that, but how it gets to that master's covers what is required of the 4-year engineering degree is still confusing to me. I just don't buy that all of a sudden Northeastern says their courses are worth 4 credits, where every other master's program around the country is basically 3 credits. And that's
Nathan,
a
last,
sign- that was part of our evaluation, but that wasn't the critical point. The critical point is that we as a board are asking candidates to have a 4-year engineering degree, which is part of the national model law. And we're finding, our board long ago used to make exceptions, but this board has not been making exceptions.
John, in the case of Mr. Morrow, there was a concerted effort when he went to Northeastern to attempt anyway. Perhaps in retrospect, it didn't quite meet our standards, but there was an effort to include some courses that would in some way make up some of the deficiencies. Does the fact that that effort was made and the fact that he has passed the 2-part structural national exam and concentrates only in structures, would that change any of our opinion in this case? The factors that we didn't know at the time were that he had passed the 2 structural exams and has been now licensed in Massachusetts. Not that that should influence ours, but due to those 2 factors, would that change any aspect of our prior decision?
I'm sure there are other applicants that have done the same thing, but we have basically been very consistent about not accepting an undergraduate science degree in place of a 4-year engineering program. And
Would it be possible if Mr. Morrow supplemented, some additional courses that, could be included in his resume so that, we would evaluate it at a later time to determine if, those additional courses, supplemental courses, get him into the range of the amount of credits that are normally required for an engineering degree, according to what our board necessarily, likes to see, so that, not necessarily preclude him from ever, being licensed in the state of Connecticut, but with some supplemental courses, he could meet those requirements that we deem as necessary in order to have that breadth of experience. Because I would be open to that for sure.
Sorry to interrupt, but I can also offer, I have 10 years of continuing education courses, 15 hours every year for the last 5 since I've been licensed, and, probably around that before then, before it was a requirement for my licensure. I can provide that as well, in addition to a course to prep me for the FE test. And I would be happy to hear anything that's required of me.
And again, I think that the continuing education credits are important, so that it does indicate that, an effort to provide some additional background to one's education, formal education, and to include different aspects of, the presenter's view of what engineering is or what engineering should be. So I think that realistically, with some supplemental information, I would be favorable for, this application, recognizing that an effort was made initially to meet those requirements. If the NCAAS had told Mr. Morrow that he needed 6, courses instead of 4 courses, I'm pretty sure that you would have taken the 6 courses.
That's correct.
So that, with that effort that's being made, but I totally agree that, what we don't want to do is set a precedent that, anybody who has a science degree can come to the state of Connecticut and get a professional license, because of the fact that, we have made an exception in terms of, I don't think that what we want to do is say we've made an exception. In terms of what we should say is that we've considered all the aspects of, the effort that was made in order to become, somewhat viable and recognized by the NCAAS as equivalent. And even though, maybe their standards might not be as stringent and as high as ours, that there are a lot of other external, venues that we're taking care of or added that don't necessarily appear in his, evaluation that possibly we should take into consideration. And I'm sort of just one person, so I'm not sure what everybody else thinks.
Tony, you're muted.
I don't know how it goes off, but it did. So thank you for telling me that was the case. So I think that since the application for reconsideration is open this month, and it will remain that way, because I think Richard's suggestion for Nathan to provide some other information relative perhaps to his continuing education courses for evaluation of that, and any other courses that may not have been listed in the undergraduate, that we missed them under that physics degree. Might be something that we should take a little closer look at. I don't think when you look at the Bowdoin transcript, it's hard to find anything in there that would qualify toward the engineering undergraduate degree. So the only thing we could look toward perhaps is the continuing education, and perhaps that would give some additional information that we could consider. So if you do that, Nathan, we'll see if that makes a difference.
All right, thank you.
Also for the record, last month we had a similar situation, and the applicant recognized the deficiency, and our decision not to license in Connecticut was upheld again. And as John pointed out, it's not the first time that this has come up. Very seldom. I will say frequently, there have been applicants who have made that concerted effort to take courses during the master's program to specifically compensate for the deficiencies in the undergraduate program. Last month, the applicant recognized that he did not have that same effort, and therefore accepted the fact that we could not license him in Connecticut, because it would be inconsistent with the way we've been doing this for 20 years. So let's see what you can produce, and we'll continue the consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate. All right, moving on, we made to our let's see. Well, we can leave the minutes to the end, because Ryan was not here, nor was Bob. So Bob, if you're still here, I think
I'm
that
still here.
concludes our surveying elements. We did have minutes, but you were not in attendance, so I don't think we have anything from you on that. So if you're so
You're
inclined,
kicking me to the curb.
what was that?
You're kicking me to the curb.
I still didn't get it, because I guess I'm hard of hearing.
Oh, okay. I will go then.
All right, thank you. That's what I was trying to get across. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so there's one more item of correspondence. We'll go through it. It's again, NCAAS is looking for engineers that have a background in architectural engineering to participate in their PACS committee, which helps them develop the exam for architectural engineering. So that's point of notice. And that brings us to our regular agenda for the review of applicants for licensure in the state of Connecticut. So we did our, on our agenda, we did take care of item B, which is the PAX request. We reviewed Ryan Thompson's introduction to the issues of the new datum. And we have addressed the applicant Nathan Morrow's request for reconsideration. John DeWolf reviewed the other applicants for reconsideration. One was Brian Deely and Carrie Ann Adams Finch for reconsideration of Class 4 reciprocity.
Okay, Deely has an undergraduate degree that was not accredited. It appears that it is, though, an undergraduate engineering degree, and it may be that when he was in the program, it just wasn't accredited, but he has a bachelor's degree from a 4-year engineering program, and that combined with the master's degree looks good to me, so I recommend approval of Deely.
Okay, that's an undergraduate and master's, so the recommendation is to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried on, that motion carries. Next applicant was Carrie Ann Adams Finch.
Finch was not given approval by NCEES, but her degree is a full technical 4-year engineering degree, and she has 27 years experience, and I think she basically meets the requirements, so I move approval of Finch.
27 years experience, you said? Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in
I'll
favor?
second that.
Oh, yeah, we
I'll
did.
second- I'll
Sorry, I
second
got
that.
ahead of myself, Richard. Yeah.
I was waiting for Al, but
That's all right. It's been moved and seconded to approve Carrie Ann Adams Finch. NCEES reviewed it. 4-year technical degree, 27 years experience. It's consistent with our regulations. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And Richard Swezak reviewed Annette Rivera.
in terms of originally when I reviewed her application, she had just given us photocopies of her degree and photocopies of her documentation. I guess since then we have the documentation from the, I guess entities that issued, her degree from Puerto Rico, and that the fact that she does have her, fundamentals and her principles of engineering from Puerto Rico. So I'll make a motion that we accept her application.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Al. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing on that, motion carries. Thank you both for the thorough review and also for receiving the additional information that we requested that indicated that in fact they had met our standard criteria. The next list is on our new business is a list of candidates who took and passed the CBT and NCEES exam.
Hey,
So
Tony, excuse
Yes.
me. You
Yeah.
forgot there's a reconsideration for a class 1.
Bottom of page 2, Tony, Perez.
It's on
Okay.
the revised agenda.
the
Yeah.
revised. Okay,
One
I'm
that came in
sorry.
today.
All right, who reviewed that?
I did. Perez has a bachelor's degree that's a science degree. It's not an engineering degree. NCEES evaluation shows that he does not have any deficiencies, and that doesn't make any sense. They have apparently given him credit for 4 undergraduate courses. At least 2 are clearly not engineering courses, and 12 courses in his graduate program. Essentially, he falls into the category of having an undergraduate science degree with a master's degree with 12 engineering courses. This is in no way meets our requirements for a 4-year engineering degree. And so I move that it once again be declined.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Robert. Another very thorough very thorough review, John. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion to deny Perez due to a lack of an undergraduate engineering curriculum and recognition that the master's with only 12 engineering courses does not fulfill the requirement. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I apologize for missing that on the second agenda. We move back to item number 1 then on the bottom of page 2 in our regular agenda. This is a list of candidates who passed the NCEES CBT exams, mechanical, 3 civil, and 1 electrical. As for notice, information, any discussion? If not, we'll move on to our regular agenda for review of applicants, Class 1, Credit Part 1, Aggraves to Velocity on page 3. John DeWolf reviewed all applicants.
I move approval of the full group from Aggraves through Balashi.
Second. Thank you, Robert. These are all applicants who have taken the FE and passed. So all those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. John DeWolf also reviewed NICAM and Sohail for Class 2 exam, Credit Part 1.
Okay, I'm getting that out. NICAM was missing 10 hours in math and science when he was foreign degree was evaluated, and 3 hours of general education. However, NICAM has also a master's in engineering, so I don't see any problem.
You want to do it as a separate motion?
No, I'll do them both. I'm going
Okay.
to recommend approval. And Sohail has a master's from Illinois, but everything looked fine. So I move approval for both.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. All those in favor of the motion to approve NICAM and Sohail, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I reviewed the next group of applicants on page 3. I'm going to take them, I take one separately. That's Christopher Cruz. That's the last name. The other one's Benoit, Bo, Brindley, Carr, and Caraval Sanchez. I found all of them to be model law engineers, all currently licensed. And out of those, only 2 did not have a master's. So my recommendation is to approve Benoit through Cole or reciprocity. Is there a motion to accept my recommendation?
So
So
move.
Thank you, Bob. Is there a second? Thank you,
A
John.
second.
Second.
Who is that? Al? Thank you, Al. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Now, the only one I just point out from Christopher Cruz is that while he has a BS in engineering from University of Missouri in 2004, he's currently licensed in Missouri. His expertise is in forensic engineering and structures. Also of note, I had several applicants over the this past period in forensic engineering, which I guess is an extension of structural, but I hadn't seen it previously. Anyway, in the case of Christopher Cruz, he took an absence from engineering from 17 to 21, June of 17 to July of 21, wherein he ran a business for home care for the elderly. So the only question I have, and now he's back into forensic engineering. So do we have any issue with that, or should we be concern. Certainly the experience that he had prior to all seemed very good in structural activities. And then he started his own business back into forensic engineering. I just wanted to point out whether or not we had any concern for the absence in the from the engineering business or design.
Did he maintain his license throughout those 4 years?
I don't have that information, to be honest. That's a good question. I didn't think of that, but perhaps that's something that we could ask, right? He's currently licensed in Missouri through December of 25. And he had not listed any others.
I'm
But
going to make a guess. I'm going to make a guess that he's got a full-time job doing the medical or the home care thing, and he's probably going to do stuff on the side. And I don't see any problem. I think he's got a good degree, got experience. I think he's okay just because he's doing another
Right.
job.
It's okay.
I
Yeah, I don't disagree. So if that's, I just want to throw it out as a discussion.
Yep.
Okay, so I would then recommend that he be approved for reciprocity.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, the only fact about whether or not he maintained his licensure in another jurisdiction. In other words, he was never registered in Connecticut.
Okay. I don't have a problem because I don't usually look at that. I mean, I want to know that they're currently licensed.
Currently licensed.
They've
Yeah.
taken the break. I did a case last month where it was clearly a woman who took time off to have a family. And then was
Right.
coming.
Yeah.
And I don't think.
Similar situation. That's right. I remember that. Okay, so my recommendation, having had the discussion, is to recommend approval for Christopher Cruz. Is there a motion to accept that recommendation?
So move.
Thank you, John. Second?
Second,
Thank you, Richard. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve Christopher Cruz for reciprocity from Missouri, say aye. Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Richard Sweetak reviewed the next group of class 4 reciprocity on page 4. That would be from DeMello through Johnston.
Yeah, I just to go over, I'm gonna approve all of them, but just to sort of give a little background. Bruce Goldman had a degree from Swarthmore College in 1973. He received a master's from MIT in 1975. And for some strange reason, he's not model law. and he has 42 years of experience. And I'm over there. He has a master's from MIT, which, is kind of hard to get. And he has, unless Swarthmore College, and it's a bachelor's in engineering in 1973. But, and maybe Swarthmore College was not accredited back then, but, I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be.
I don't think MIT went through accreditation either for many years. I don't know if they still are doing that. But for a long time, MIT they didn't think they needed to.
Oh,
Right.
That's what I recall. I may be wrong, but that's what I recollect, that MIT never bothered with accreditation.
oh.
So I don't think there's any problem.
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't think there's any problem. I did see one applicant that got a perfect 4.0 in 4 years of engineering, which is, I'm not sure how you. It was Joshua Hennefeld. Hunefeld? It's like a 4.0, because sometimes I just see, how astute are some of the applicants. And when I saw his, 4.0, I'm over there. Oh my God.
Great it's great inflation. That doesn't, it can happen today, but it certainly wouldn't have happened when you and I were students.
No, I'm over there, Maine, how the heck do you maintain that kind of a, concentration? It's like every once in a while you gotta let your hair down and do something else, so, but anyways.
Richard, you didn't even have a 4.0 in partying. Come on.
I know. I was an engineer, so, but anyways, and then I did have, Alexei Eisen is from Russia, but he has an equivalent degree. So, to make a long story short, I'll make a motion that we accept all the applications from D. Mello to Johnson.
Thank you,
I'll second
Richard.
it.
Was it Al?
Yeah.
All those in favor of the motion
After
to
that, I
approve?
better.
What was that? You better get
I
it for
said after
Richard.
that, I better.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. So unfortunately, we didn't hear from
So,
Rob Lewandowski.
Tony,
Yes,
Can I interrupt for a minute? So
Yes,
if
you-
you check your email, Rob did send us, he said he sent it on Sunday, but I told him neither one of us received it, but he did resend it this while earlier while you guys were
Okay.
talking.
I'll have to take a minute to go get it, but do you have it there? His recommendation?
I do, and he recommends approval for all the class 4s on the regulars agenda as well as the supplemental.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept Rob's recommendation? I know from having seen his other ones, he's always very thorough on his evaluation of their experience and education. So is there a motion to accept his recommendation to approve Jorzak through Rains?
I'll make
So
that
moved.
motion.
Okay, good. I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, John. All
He did
those in favor, what was that?
Sorry, I was gonna say he did provide notes if you wanted me to read them. It was just talks about model law and who's missing what, but I
That's
mean,
what
I
I
have
said.
it if you want me to read it.
No, on his spreadsheet, he's always very thorough with the commentary. So if he's approved them, he didn't flag anything. Usually, they're all there. So is there a motion to accept this recommendation? Yes, and it's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And Bob Doan reviewed Ramakrishna through Wasam on page 4 of our regular agenda for reciprocity.
I'll make a motion to approve the entire group. I had 2 that were non-model law because of foreign degrees. One was evaluated. It was lacking a few credits in basic education, but again, it was a foreign degree from India, and I think they had 75 some odd credits in engineering. So it was very good. So I make a motion to approve the entire group.
Thank you. Thank you, Al. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And Ryan Thompson reviewed Weatherholtz, White, Weisler, and Z for reciprocity on page 4.
Yeah, so Weatherholtz and Weisler, those 2 are model law. And White was, I believe White was not model law, but it was because of, I guess, a foreign degree, which was deemed equivalent. So the 3 of them, I recommend approval, and they all have, sufficient experience. Z, I have some questions about that I'm not sure. Yeah, I want to be consistent with the board, and especially after that conversation earlier with Nate Barrow. The issue, well, I guess, should we just approve those 3 first?
Let's
Yeah.
take the first 3. Yes, there's a recommendation by Ryan to approve Weatherholtz, White, and Weisler, 2 model laws, 1 foreign degree evaluated for Mr. White. Is there a motion to accept this recommendation?
So moved.
Thank you, Richard. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. So all those in favor of the motion to approve Weatherholtz, White, and Weissler for Class 4 reciprocity, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries, which leaves us to Boshi Z.
Yeah. All right. So Z has a. All right. So just to give you the quick background, has a bachelor's in automation from East China University in Science and Technology, and then he has a master's in electrical engineering from New Jersey Institute of Technology. He has 8 years experience under licensed engineer, and the experience actually looks pretty decent. His degree was deemed not equivalent by NCEES, and it appears that specifically the reason why was that he was missing 2 science courses, and the note is basically saying that the education standard requires at least 2 courses in basic sciences, missing biology or chemistry. You can't have them in the same area. So essentially his degree is missing biology or chemistry, and there's 2 credits that he's missing, or 2 courses, not credits. So given that, I want to again be consistent with the board and how you usually do things. To me, it sounds like this is not I would recommend against it because he doesn't have the science degree or the engineering bachelor's. But I kind of want to open it up to discussion because I'm not sure how. Yeah.
First
I
react.
wouldn't-
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Okay, I wouldn't be concerned. I think evaluating science courses is not as easy. He has the engineering courses, he has a master's, that certainly more than covers it.
Okay. All right. Well then.
John, Ryan, just a little bit more background. When we all started, it was that before we had NCEES evaluation, so we were somewhat naive and blind on that. When there was a foreign degree, because we didn't have the ability to evaluate, we often took the master's as validating the undergraduate, meaning that the university would not have accepted that background. And typically missing a couple of courses in science or humanities, it hasn't swayed us to oppose or to deny. So especially only 2. Sometimes we've seen 12 credits of humanities or science missing. So
Okay.
And
with
Yeah.
that in
Well,
mind, what would be
well,
your
then-
recommendation? So
Yeah, well, with that in mind, and also, well, before I get to that, I do want to point out that the requirement for engineering is 48 credits, I guess, and he's got 51, so he exceeds that. So with that in mind, and thank you for the information, because that's why I was confused. But with that in mind, I'd recommend that we accept it and improve it.
So is there a motion to accept that recommendation?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Rob.
Second,
I'll second.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor of the motion to approve Boshi Z for Class 4 reciprocity, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Bob Doan reviewed one applicant, Ken Lee, for reinstatement. Continuously licensed in another state. He didn't sign any other now he wants to be reinstated in Connecticut. Your evaluation, Mr. Doan.
I make a motion to approve for reinstatement for Kenneth Lee.
Is there a second?
second,
Thank you, Richard. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
aye,
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Which brings us to our supplemental agenda. And the first group of applicants, Mr. Jamie first applicant, Jamie Littlefield and Kim Quach. Gender neutral, because I couldn't say from reading the names. Not that that matters. But regardless, Littlefield and Quach for
So I move-
Class
I
1
move
credit part
approval.
1.
I move approval.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I reviewed the next 4 applicants: Bertram, Carlisle, Celio, and Cohen. 3 of the 4 model law. And 2 of the 4 with masters. So based on all that and their review, again, 2 more forensic engineers. I would recommend approval of those 4: Bertram, Carlisle, Celio, and Cohen. Is there a motion to accept my recommendation?
So moved.
Thank you, Bob. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Al. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. So our next group of applicants for Class 4 reciprocity was Coolidge, Fleming, Franklin, Gath, and Giacalone. Reviewed by Bob Doan.
They're all model law engineers, all appropriately licensed and educated. And I make a motion to approve the entire group.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor of the motion to approve Coolidge, Fleming, Franklin, Gath, and Giacalone, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Jane, if you would be so kind as to include the recommendation from Rob Lewandowski on the next group: Kozanis, McNiven, Martinez, Torres, Namati, and Nickel, 5 applicants.
So he said for the supplemental agenda, I recommend approval for them all. They are all model law with good degrees and good experience.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to accept Rob's recommendation?
So
I'll
moved.
make that motion.
Richard, thank you.
Oh,
Is there a
oh.
second?
Done.
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve Cosnes through Nickel, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Richard Swezak reviewed the next 5 applicants for Class 4 reciprocity: Placide, Proctor, Ron, Robertson, and Thibodeau.
I'll make a motion that we accept all 5 applicants. They're all model law and they have the adequate experience. So
I'll second.
make a motion.
Who was the second? Al, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Ryan reviewed 2 more applicants, Tyrol and Vial, for Class 4 reciprocity.
Oh, actually, it's 4. I got 4.
I didn't get my supplemental agenda printed in the right form, so I apologize. So there's 4, okay?
Yep. Yeah, it's Tyrol, Vial, Rademacher, and Boissard. And 3 of them are model law, and the other one is perfectly acceptable. So I approve all. I recommend approval for all of them.
So a motion to accept that recommendation.
So moved.
Thank you,
Someone
John.
else has to make the motion, not Brian.
Yeah,
No.
I make,
John
just
made the
did.
motion. And who's
Oh,
gonna second?
sorry.
Who's on the second? Robert
I'll
Dolan?
second, yes.
It's been moved and seconded by Mr. John DeWolf and Mr. Bob Doan to approve Tyrol. I don't have the last, I'm sorry, Rademacher in the last name.
Yeah, it's Tyrol, Vial, Rademacher, and Boissard.
Very sorry. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. And John DeWolf reviewed the last 3 applicants for Class 4 reciprocity, which was Weaver, Winiger, and Yang.
Weaver, Winiger, and Yang are model law, And Yang has a foreign degree and 37 years of experience. His foreign degree was reviewed and has no deficiencies. So I move approval of all three.
Second.
Thank you, Robert. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve Weaver, Winiger, and Yang, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Sounds like an infield now that we got baseball season underway. And we have one more group of applicants that have passed their FE. So we have now a request for a Class 9 license. Is there a motion to approve Albino through Watson on page 2 of the supplemental agenda for Class 9 license?
So moved.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, because I have a Luke, but Luke doesn't have a last name on mine.
Same
Luke,
here.
Luke Watson.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay.
Any discussion other than to add Watson to Luke? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe that completes our supplemental agenda. Which leaves us to review our minutes from the February 13th meeting. And let's see. I noted we discussed the request from Shrek about being corporate license. I noticed it was significant that we talked about the information that Ryan introduced. And other than that, I didn't have anything of note on my list. If not, is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So move.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Richard. All those in favor of the motion to accept the minutes from February 13th as presented, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Let's see. That's it. I think that's the end of our agenda for this month.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Supplementary training courses that everybody's required to take, continuing courses.
Yes.
How do they substitute for courses that are missing in the basic engineering degree?
They
That's
don't.
They usually don't. I agree with that. Sometimes they're all too often fillers, but ASCE has a much more extensive list of courses now, but they're on, they are online. That's why I asked Mr. Nathan to, send us what it is, what he has taken. It may or may not have a significant or may not have any impact, but it's a good question, Al. Very good question.
Okay, all right. I'm just curious because the ones that I, of course, had to take had to do with, ongoing issues or facts that, new occurrences and so forth, things that
It seems
occurred,
like
nothing to basic.
Yeah, it seems like you get a lot of introduction to issues of legal significance or what, but it's a problem to expect that they're going to make up for something that was deficient.
Okay, all right. I was just curious. Okay, thank you.
Can I
That's
make
it.
a request? Jane, would you send out Mr. Morrow's application again, please?
And
Yeah.
it I sure will.
I guess some of us received it. I received it in my packet, John. And it was,
Yeah.
I probably have it. I just don't know where.
I think it was John, it was attached to Jane's
Yeah.
email that we received yesterday.
It's the C1 attachment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the
And again,
last,
you know,
Jay,
But it is extra.
What's that?
She may not have to.
I have the letter that that Tony sent to Mr. Morrow. Oh,
But
does that
it's-
have the
And you're right,
application
there
too?
also have-
I got
It's-
it. I got it. Never mind. I got it.
Okay.
John, you're the one that, you know, has the ability to really understand the transcript, but, you know, when you look at the transcript, it's really hard to find anything under the physics degree that's applicable. In our, you know, basic engineering curriculum, you take physics, right? And it's an introduction, and you take some calculus introduction course. But it's really not, there's nothing else in that program that can be applicable to the engineering degree. And I like your analysis of the fact that you gave it 48 credits because you decided to call it 4 courses. But in comparison to everything else, it's the same course. So where's the rest of it? And then you get some of those foreign degrees and you find they got 155 course hours at 3 hours a course.
It doesn't.
I'd like to know if Mr. Seth or the evaluator, what was his name, is the same guy that does the evaluation on all these courses, you know? It was not I was not in any way comforted by, what's his name here? Sorry, I don't remember. Hold on.
Nathan.
No, not Nathan, the NCWS response to our inquiry. Hold on. It's,
It's Steph
So that
Good
happens,
now.
get feedback. It's really helpful.
It's a she.
An email with those 2 items. So that they don't come
what was that, Jane? I'm sorry.
about.
It's Steph. It's a she. It's Steph Good now. She's like I don't think she does.
Oh,
She's like
Steph, yeah, Steph Goodenow.
Yeah.
The letter, the response from NCEES notes that the 2 physics courses are definitely a stretch.
Right.
And this was the evaluation was done 10 years ago. I don't think NCEES would have approved it at all today.
And the other part that was a little bit disconcerting for me, in the last paragraph on that first page, most boards have requirements that are not nearly as strict as what is required by the standard. In other words, we've been professing that we're somewhat unique in that our policy is consistent with the regulation. And I recounted that situation when I asked every state in our Northeast zone, every jurisdiction in the Northeast zone, who follows the model law. And nobody raised their hand because they grant waivers, they give it, what do you call it? Grant waivers and take experience, and so, a couple of them still had some verbal aspects to it. I know that every year it gets a little more stringent, but just to say that they recognize that the undergraduate requirements are ignored, you know, it just doesn't sit well. If you want to make the model law applicable to all, then it should be consistent. Anyway, it's a tough one because unfortunately the record of what he's doing now is remarkable. You know, it's very good. If he does send in the, huh?
I don't get it. It isn't anything more than a science degree plus
Yeah,
a normal
agreed.
master's degree. And
We're gonna
there's
stay
no
that way.
They're stretching it by saying they're 4 credits. I'm gonna look into that, but I don't think that works anyway.
Right.
because, you know, the only thing that, you know, I feel a little, you know, maybe, you know, trying to stretch it a little bit, but he did take 4 additional courses, you know, prior to his master's. And again, I think that what we have to do is blame NCEES for not saying, well, you need 6 courses or 7 courses type of thing, where, you know, they said, well, if you take 4, you're gonna, you know, you should be equivalent. And he was just following the direction of NCEES, and possibly, you know, that was poor, you know, again, advice that he did get from NCEES. And, you know, and unfortunately, you know, I feel, you know, bad that, you know, he made the effort that he was going to do whatever they told him to do. And he did exactly what they told him to do. And they just told him the wrong thing to do, or maybe it wasn't adequate enough where, you know, he needed more than 4 courses. He needed 6 or 7 courses. And, you know, and all of a sudden he has to, you know, be punished for some bad advice that he got from somebody else. And as long as he was willing to do it, you know, and maybe I'm being too lenient in terms of, you know, trying to, you know, to see the good in him that, you know, he did have, you know, the exert, you know, he did make an effort to do everything that was required. And unfortunately, he got some bad advice.
I wouldn't say he's being punished. He only
Right.
has 8, he only has 8 master's level courses, and then he has the 4 other courses that are in structures.
Right.
He has 12 courses that are engineering. And that
Right.
doesn't come anywhere near a
And
broad.
and maybe and maybe I'm just looking at the good, you know, thing is, you know, obviously he if he was interested in engineering, he should have gotten an engineering degree. You know,
Right.
that should be, you know, the number one statement, you know, geez, you know, I got a degree in, you know, glass blowing, and now I want to be an engineer, you know, well, take engineering courses, you know, get an engineering degree. And maybe that's really the answer is that, you know, regardless of the fact that, you know, you did take some supplemental courses, you didn't take enough of them. And maybe, you know, that is the answer, that you just don't have enough base for us to consider you as being a viable engineer. And you know, like you said, there's some people who take tests very well, regardless of whether they're, you know, versed in the, you know, environment that they're taking the test in or not. And, you know, so, you know, if you're a good tester, that doesn't mean that you make good decisions. Yeah, and basically what we're trying to do is make sure that who's ever, you know, doing something, you know, makes a good decision in what they're, you know, designing or what they're approving. So.
Okay, but in our
I'm gonna
case,
go even further. He has 7 master's level courses plus a course that's called Financial Management for Engineering. I don't consider that an engineering course. So he has 7 master's level courses and 4 undergraduate courses.
And when it comes,
again, it just
in the final
doesn't.
analysis, we're trying to be consistent with all the other applicants that we reviewed. So, and we rely on
Right.
John, you know, for the evaluation of the education, and we have to concur. It's just not equivalent to what we've done with others. That's it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know, and then again, I guess you're sort of turning me around, and then I'm agreeing with everybody again, you know, but
You're
you
being
know,
very
I guess
nice.
when,
You're being
if
very
we're
nice.
not consistent, we're in trouble. We've got to be
yeah, and then
consistent.
that's what I mean is that we need to be consistent for sure, because then all of a sudden, you know, we're going to go down the wrong path, and you know, and like you said, you know, I think that, you know, maybe what we do is we encourage him to take some additional classes or courses so that he meets our criteria, rather than, you know, us spending our criteria to meet his, you know, breadth of, you know, lack of courses type of thing.
Okay,
Agreed.
Rich, if he has to take additional courses, he's going to ask us to tell us which courses he should take, and we should not be in that
No.
position.
No. We definitely should not be in that position. No. It's going to be, you know, he should go to, you know, an advisor who says, you know, I can't get licensed in Connecticut because of the fact that, you know, I don't have the breadth that they're looking for. What would you recommend I take? And if he talks to a good advisor, and that's what, you know, colleges have, you know, they have your advisors to tell you what to do.
I don't think that will work.
Okay.
Because who
Well,
depends upon the advisor, and the advisor doesn't care at all what we require in Connecticut to be licensed. I think
Right.
it basically just doesn't have it. And I don't see why we're really reconsidering it. He's clearly the case with a science degree with no engineering and then a master's. And
Agreed.
I'm really disappointed in the accreditation saying that this was equivalent. I think they really blew it at the NCEES. And I think they need to admit they blew it.
John, one more factor is that, NCEES, whether we recognize it because it's not in our statute, and it probably will not be while we're all here, but, they want the basic undergraduate engineering curriculum and then master's. So it's BS plus 30. So when you look at it from that standpoint, how can you say that you qualified for the first part? You're recognizing that you need A plus B and you don't have A. It doesn't make sense for them to say that degree was equivalent when they know it's fully science or physics in this case, right? There's just a
Right.
logical progression there. You can't have B if you don't have A, and they don't have A. So you can't make it equivalent, especially when you consider that you've made the requirements for licensure under the model law more stringent than they had been. So
The bottom line is if he works in Connecticut, he's gonna have to have a PE sign off on him.
right, that's
Right.
it. And it's not the worst situation.
No.
All right,
Sure. I agree.
thank you all. Al,
Thank
you have
you.
a job to do.
Hello? Motion to adjourn. Can you?
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Okay.
Thank
See
you,
ya.
I'm
Richard.
gonna take this call. Bye.
Okay,
See
bye.
you guys later.
So long, thank you.
Care.